Ladies and gentlemen, emotional reactivity is one of the most common yet deeply misunderstood responses to life's challenges. It is the lightning-fast reflex that makes you snap, retreat, explode, or spiral when something strikes a nerve. At its core, emotional reactivity is a signal, an alarm sounding off from a wound that hasn't yet healed. And the more reactive you are, the more likely it is that you are still living in survival mode, not spiritual freedom. When you react too much, you're not just responding to the moment, you're responding to years of built-up emotional pain, fear, and insecurity. A harsh word feels like a personal attack. A delay feels like rejection. A disagreement feels like abandonment. This isn't because you're weak, it's because you're human, and because something inside you still needs to be seen, soothed, and surrendered. Imagine this. You walk into a room and someone you care about gives you a cold look. Instantly, your heart races. You start thinking, did I do something wrong? Your mind builds a story. Anger or sadness swells, you withdraw or lash out. That's emotional reactivity. The trigger was small, but the reaction was big. Why? Because it didn't just touch the surface, it hit a deeper layer. Maybe a layer of feeling unwanted, unworthy, or unloved. We react because we haven't healed. But here's the good news: emotional reactivity doesn't have to be your default. It can become your doorway. Every reaction is an opportunity to pause, to pray, and to grow. Faith teaches us that we are not slaves to our emotions. God has given us the spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, not one of fear or chaos. When you realize this, your reactions begin to shift into responses. Your triggers become teachers. Your wounds become wisdom. There was a man who once said, "Every time I got criticized at work, I felt like I couldn't breathe. My stomach would knot up, and I would start defending myself, even when no one was attacking me." Through prayer, self-reflection, and spiritual counseling, he realized he was still reacting to his father's voice, always critical, never affirming. It wasn't his boss who made him suffer. It was his unhealed childhood pain echoing in the present. That realization changed everything. Emotional reactivity keeps you stuck in cycles of suffering, but awareness breaks the cycle. When you begin to see your reactions not as failures but as messengers, you can begin the work of healing. Instead of saying, "Why did I get so upset?" ask, "What part of me still needs healing?" Instead of judging your emotions, get curious about them. And most importantly, invite God into them. Speak the word over your life. Declare peace over your mind. Say, "Lord, I surrender my reactions. Show me the root of the wound. Help me respond with grace, not fear." This is not weakness. It is holy strength. When you take responsibility for your emotional reactivity, you reclaim your power. You become less controlled by the world and more grounded in the spirit. You stop living from the outside in and begin living from the inside out. This shift is how you move from suffering to spiritual sovereignty. Let this be your reminder. Emotional reactivity may have been your survival mechanism, but it does not have to be your future. You are more than your triggers. You are more than your pain. You are a vessel of divine healing, called to live in peace, not torment. Inner peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain calm and rooted in truth despite the chaos around you. In a world that constantly triggers emotions, tests patience, and pressures you to react, cultivating inner peace becomes both a spiritual practice and a survival tool. When you react too much, it's often because your soul is unsettled, searching for control, approval, or security in places where they cannot truly be found. And the more you chase those things externally, the more your inner peace is compromised, and the more you suffer. Suffering doesn't come from the situation itself. It comes from how we interpret, absorb, and react to it. Someone says something unkind, and instantly the heart burns. Not because of their words alone, but because those words found an opening in a wound you haven't healed. Inner peace doesn't mean you won't feel hurt or disappointment. It means you no longer allow those feelings to rule you. You can walk through a storm and remain unshaken when your peace is not tied to circumstances but anchored in something greater: God's presence. Faith teaches us that peace is not a reward for a perfect life. It is a gift available even in the middle of suffering. The instant power of divine healing begins when you stop fighting every trigger and instead invite God into your response. Think about Jesus during the storm at sea. While the disciples panicked, he slept. Why? because his peace was not dictated by external noise but by internal stillness. That same kind of stillness lives within you when you stop giving your power away to everything and everyone that pokes at your emotions. Inner peace means learning how to pause before you react. It means breathing through the tension, praying through the uncertainty, and trusting that not every battle needs your sword. Sometimes peace is the most powerful weapon you can wield. The enemy thrives on your reaction, not your stillness. There's a story of a woman who used to be set off by everything: traffic, criticism, delays, disapproval. She lived in constant reaction, constantly defending, explaining, and exhausting herself emotionally. One day she said, "I realized I had no peace because I was trying to control everything outside of me, but I never looked within." She began meditating on scriptures about peace, surrendering every trigger to God. Slowly, her life didn't change, but her spirit did, and that changed everything. When you learn to live from a place of inner peace, you no longer feel the urge to react to every opinion, insult, or obstacle. You begin to realize that your soul's serenity is too sacred to be handed over to chaos. You become the eye of the storm, still, grounded, clear. To find this kind of peace, you must let go of the illusion of control. Let go of the need to be right, the desire to be understood by everyone, and the fear of being vulnerable. None of these serve your spirit. Surrender is not defeat. It is the beginning of healing. Speak the word, Lord. Let peace be still within me. That is your prayer. That is your power. Your peace is your protection. It guards your heart and mind like armor forged in divine light. So the next time you feel your heart racing, your fists clenching, your mouth ready to defend, pause. You are not your reaction. You are not your pain. You are not the chaos around you. You are a child of God. And within you is a peace that surpasses all understanding. Spiritual self-control is one of the most powerful yet misunderstood forms of inner mastery. It is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending not to feel, but about cultivating such a deep connection to your spirit that your responses flow from wisdom, not wounds. When you react too much, it's often because you're still trying to protect an unhealed part of yourself. And every time someone touches that part, whether intentionally or not, you respond with intensity, defensiveness, or pain. But spiritual self-control invites you into a higher path, one where your reactions are replaced by discernment, your impulses by grace. The truth is, we live in a world that constantly tests our patience. Words are spoken carelessly. People misunderstand us. Life throws unexpected hardships our way. And in those moments, the human reaction is to lash out, to explain, to defend. But that reactionary life leads to more suffering, more chaos, more distance between your spirit and your purpose. Spiritual self-control is the discipline of slowing down long enough to ask, is this reaction in alignment with who I truly am? It is choosing silence over anger. It is choosing prayer over panic. It is remembering that just because someone hands you pain doesn't mean you have to hold it. You can hand it to God instead. You may have seen it before. A person with deep spiritual self-control enters a room, and no matter how loud the energy around them is, they remain calm, present, unshaken. Their peace doesn't mean they're unaware. It means they are anchored. That's what spiritual self-control gives you. The ability to be in the storm but not consumed by it. It is written that the Spirit gives us power, love, and self-control. That means self-control is not a burden. It is a divine gift. When someone tries to provoke you and you respond with peace, that is power. When a situation could break you but you choose patience, that is strength. When you walk away from conflict not out of fear but out of wisdom, that is victory. There is a powerful story of a man who was constantly ridiculed at work. His co-workers mocked his faith and tried to get a rise out of him every day. At first, he responded angrily, matching insult with insult. But he found no peace, only exhaustion. Then one day he prayed for strength to see through spiritual eyes. Slowly, he began to respond differently, not because they changed, but because he did. He stopped reacting. He started praying for them in silence. And over time, the energy around him shifted. That's the power of spiritual self-control. It doesn't change others first, it transforms you. When you commit to spiritual self-control, you begin to suffer less. Not because life becomes easier, but because your spirit becomes stronger. The things that once broke you no longer touch you the same way. You become a vessel for peace, not pain. The world doesn't need more people reacting in anger. It needs people who know how to pause, to breathe, to invite God into the moment before responding. That's how we change the world, one controlled, spirit-led response at a time. So the next time you're triggered, remember your reaction is not your identity. But your feelings are valid, but your faith must lead. Speak the word, Lord, when my soul wants to erupt, teach me to rule my spirit, that I may not be ruled by my emotions. Because in that self-control lies your freedom, in that pause lies your healing, and in that surrender you rise, not as a slave to reaction, but as a master of divine response. Faith over reaction is the sacred truth to trust divine wisdom instead of giving into emotional impulses. In a world that constantly provokes, tests and challenges, it is easy, almost natural, to react quickly. When someone criticizes you, you snap back. When life disappoints you, you complain. When fear creeps in, you try to control everything around you. But what if, in the very moment you feel like reacting, you chose faith instead? What if you paused, breathed, and believed that there is a higher power at work, even in the chaos? That's the heart of choosing faith over reaction. When you react too much, it is often because you have forgotten your spiritual center. You feel the need to defend yourself, to prove something, or to fix everything immediately. But these reactions come from fear, not faith. They come from the wounded ego, not the healed soul. Faith says, I don't need to respond to everything. I trust that what's meant for me cannot be taken from me. I believe that I am protected, guided, and held even when I don't understand. I think about Jesus in the storm. While the disciples panicked, he slept. Why? Not because he didn't care, but because he had faith that the storm wouldn't destroy what God had ordained. That same kind of calm is available to you when you stop letting your reactions lead you and start letting your faith sustain you. There was once a woman who struggled with emotional reactivity in her relationships. Every slight misunderstanding turned into an argument. Every unkind word pierced her like a dagger. She lived on the edge of defense, exhausted by her own reactions. Then one day, after a particularly painful argument, she opened her Bible and read, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." That verse shifted something inside her. Slowly, she began practicing stillness instead of shouting. She started praying before responding, and something incredible happened. Not only did her peace increase, but the conflicts around her began to fade. Faith had done what reaction never could. It had brought her peace. The choosing faith over reaction is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. It means you know who you are and whose you are. It means you are grounded in something bigger than the moment. When people misunderstand you, you don't need to explain yourself. When things don't go your way, you don't spiral. When pain visits your doorstep, you don't panic. Because faith whispers, "This too shall pass." Something greater is being formed in you. It is easy to react, but it takes divine discipline to remain rooted. Faith is the pause that allows your soul to catch up with your emotions. It's the anchor that keeps you from being swept away. It is what allows you to say, even though this hurts, I will not lose myself. Even though I feel the fire, I will trust the one who walks with me through it. Faith over reaction is a conscious choice, moment by moment, to surrender control and trust God's timing. It's knowing that your worth is not up for debate. It's believing that silence can be more powerful than shouting. It's standing firm in peace while the world around you trembles in rage. So the next time your heart races and your mind urges you to react, remember this. Faith is your true power. Speak the word, call on the Spirit, let the divine take the wheel. Because when you choose faith over reaction, you don't just avoid suffering. You step into spiritual mastery, emotional freedom, and the healing peace that only God can give. Emotional intelligence is the silent power that allows us to understand, manage, and transform our emotional world. When we say, "You react too much, that's why you suffer," we are pointing directly to the absence of emotional intelligence. This concept is not just about controlling anger or masking sadness. It's about cultivating a deep awareness of your emotions, learning to respond with wisdom instead of reflex, and aligning your inner state with spiritual truth rather than external chaos. Imagine a person who gets triggered by everything. Criticism, delays, misunderstandings, rejection. Each moment pulls them into anxiety or defensiveness. They carry invisible wounds, and their reactions are simply the echo of that inner pain. Now imagine another person who faces similar challenges but responds with grace, calm, and compassion. What's the difference? Emotional intelligence. It's not that they don't feel hurt or afraid. It's that they've learned to pause, observe, and respond with intention. At the core of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. You must know your patterns before you can heal them. If you constantly react when someone questions your worth, it may be because you haven't affirmed your own value. If you lash out when you feel ignored, it may be a deeper call for love that you haven't yet answered from within. Emotional intelligence says go inward. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Where is this coming from? What needs healing here? Only then can you break the cycle of suffering that comes from knee-jerk reactions. Emotional intelligence also teaches empathy, not just for others, but for ourselves. When you suffer because you react too much, you are often punishing yourself for having feelings. But feelings are not the enemy. Emotional intelligence helps you honor your emotions without letting them dominate you. You learn to sit with pain without drowning it, to acknowledge anger without becoming destructive, and to hold space for grief without letting it steal your joy. There is a divine component to all of this. When you ask the Holy Spirit to guide your emotions, you are surrendering your reactions to a higher power. You are saying, Lord, I want to see through your eyes. I want to respond with your heart. That's where true transformation begins. Speak the word. Ask for healing. Let divine truth replace emotional chaos. Faith is the bridge between reaction and wisdom. Let's take a real-life example. A man constantly reacted to his boss's criticism. Every meeting left him frustrated, angry, and defeated. But one day, after hearing a sermon about peace, he decided to do something different. He started journaling his emotions instead of expressing them immediately. He began praying before entering meetings. Slowly, he noticed his perspective shift. He wasn't just hearing criticism, he was uncovering his deep-seated fear of failure. By facing it with emotional intelligence and spiritual awareness, he stopped reacting, and the suffering began to fade. Emotional intelligence isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for peace, healing, and meaningful relationships. When you learn to regulate your emotions, you regain your power. You no longer depend on the world to validate you. You don't let others dictate your mood. You become anchored in truth, not tossed by every wave of circumstance. So the next time you're tempted to react, to yell, shut down, run away, pause, breathe, tune into the voice of God within. Let emotional intelligence be your compass. And remember, you were not created to live in emotional bondage. You were created for freedom, for growth, and for joy. Healing through awareness is a powerful and life-changing process that begins with one simple, courageous step: observing yourself honestly. When we say, you react too much, that's why you suffer, we're not casting judgment. We're holding up a mirror. Reactions are not random. They're the body's way of screaming about wounds that haven't been acknowledged, emotions that haven't been processed, and pain that's been buried under years of pretending everything is fine. Most of us go through life on autopilot. Someone says something that touches an old scar, and we snap, we feel disrespected, and we lash out, we feel rejected, and we shut down. These reactions happen so fast. We don't even know we're hurting until the damage is done. That's why awareness is the key. It stops the unconscious loop. It invites you to pause, breathe, and ask, what is really going on inside of me? Healing through awareness begins with witnessing your own reactions without judgment. You notice the tension in your shoulders when you're criticized. You feel the heat rising when someone ignores you. And instead of acting on that emotion, you stay with it. You name it. You trace it back. I felt this same panic when I was a child, when I was left out or overlooked. Now you're not just reacting, you're remembering. And in remembering, you begin to release. Awareness brings light into dark places. You begin to see that you've been blaming others for touching wounds they didn't create. You see how your reactions are not about the present moment, they're about the past. That awareness doesn't just heal, it liberates. It gives you the power to respond instead of react, to breathe instead of break, to love instead of lash out. This is where faith plays a critical role. You're not doing this alone. Healing through awareness means inviting God into the hidden corners of your soul. You pray, Lord, show me the truth. Speak the word, Lord, and heal this place in me. Divine healing isn't about ignoring your pain. It's about facing it with a sacred kind of honesty. It's about saying, yes, I was wounded. Yes, I have triggers, but I will no longer be a prisoner to what I haven't faced. Real life healing starts small. A woman who always felt abandoned in relationships started noticing how she panicked every time her partner was busy. In the past, she'd accuse him, sabotage the relationship, or spiral into despair. But one day, she paused, she prayed, she sat with the fear, and she realized this wasn't about him. This was about her father leaving when she was young. That moment of awareness didn't just change her day, it changed her life. It broke a generational pattern of fear. Healing through awareness is a daily practice. It's choosing to check in with yourself before reacting. It's journaling what you feel instead of projecting it onto others. It's creating space between stimulus and response so that wisdom can speak louder than your wounds. And here's the true thing: your reactions are sacred teachers. They are messengers pointing you to where love is needed. Don't shame them. Don't suppress them. Listen. They're guiding you to the places where healing is still possible. So let this be your call to action. The next time you feel triggered, pause. Close your eyes. Ask God for clarity. Say to yourself, this is not the enemy, this is the invitation. Step into awareness. Step into healing. Let the divine do what only the divine can do. Turn your reactions into revelations, your pain into power, and your suffering into a story of redemption. A resilient mindset is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to deeply without being consumed. When you react too much, when every word cuts like a knife or every disagreement feels like betrayal, you're not broken. You're simply in need of strength that comes from within. A resilient mindset is what shields your peace, protects your joy, and teaches you to pause before you bleed on people who didn't cause your wounds. To cultivate resilience, you first need to recognize the source of your suffering. It's not just the situation, it's how you respond to it. Most people suffer more from their reactions than the actual events. Someone walks away and your mind spirals into stories of unworthiness. Someone criticizes you and you relive every childhood moment of feeling unloved. A resilient mind sets pause. Breathe. This pain is real, but it will not define me. This moment is heavy, but I will carry it with grace. Building this kind of mental resilience doesn't mean you become numb. It means you gain the wisdom to know what to carry and what to release. You don't fight every battle. You don't respond to every insult. You don't prove your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You learn that silence is strength, peace is power, and not everything needs your reaction. A real resilience starts in faith. It's the unshakable belief that you were created with purpose, that God's plan for you includes strength in weakness, and that your reactions do not control your destiny. Your response does. Speak the word, Lord, becomes more than a prayer. It becomes your foundation. You speak life over yourself. You declare healing over your emotional wounds. You say, I will no longer live at the mercy of every storm. I will be the calm within it. Look around and you'll see countless examples of resilient people who chose peace over panic. A man who was once filled with rage now chooses prayer instead of retaliation. A woman who used to chase love now sits in her worth, knowing that real love doesn't require her to beg. Their secret. They stopped reacting and started reflecting. They didn't let pain make them bitter. They let it make them better. And yes, it's a daily choice. The world will test you. People will push your buttons. Life will throw curveballs that seem designed to break you. But resilience says, even if I bend, I won't break. Even if I fall, I'll rise again. Your mindset is a muscle. The more you train it to seek peace, the stronger it becomes. So how do you develop a resilient mindset? You practice. You journal your triggers. You breathe before you speak. You pray before you respond. You remind yourself that you have power over your thoughts, and those thoughts shape your reality. You choose to detach from drama, decline invitations to arguments, and protect your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about being a little less reactive today than you were yesterday. A little more grounded. A little more centered in truth. And the truth is this: you are not your emotions. You are not your reactions. You are the awareness behind them. The soul that can choose again, the heart that can rise from ashes. Let this be your call to action. Stop letting every offense steal your peace. Stop giving your power to pain. Stand in faith. Build your mindset. Become resilient, not because life is easy, but because you are anchored in something deeper, something eternal divine. Emotional triggers are those sudden sparks that ignite intense feelings, often taking us by surprise and overwhelming our ability to respond calmly. When you react too much, it's often because these triggers have hijacked your mind and heart. Overcoming emotional triggers is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. It's about gaining awareness, reclaiming your power, and learning how to respond rather than react. Triggers usually come from unresolved wounds, past pain, or unmet needs. A simple comment or event can activate memories or fears that make you feel vulnerable or attacked. When this happens, your mind floods with emotions like anger, sadness, or anxiety, and you might say or do things that later cause regret. The key to overcoming these triggers lies in recognizing their origin and choosing a path of healing and resilience. The first step is awareness. When you feel your emotions escalating, pause and identify what exactly has been triggered, what thought or memory surfaced. And understanding the root helps you separate the present moment from past pain. For example, if a friend's criticism hurts deeply, ask yourself, is this about what they said now, or is it reminding me of a time when I felt rejected or unworthy? Awareness is the bridge from reactive suffering to conscious control. Next is acceptance. It's natural to want to avoid pain, but running away from your emotions only gives them more power. Embrace your feelings without judgment. Allow yourself to feel hurt, angry, or disappointed without labeling yourself as weak. Remember, feeling does not equal failing. Accepting your emotions creates space for healing and change. Faith plays a crucial role in overcoming emotional triggers. When you surrender your pain to a higher power, you acknowledge that you are not alone in your struggles. Speak the word, your Lord, becomes a lifeline in moments of turmoil, a reminder that divine healing is immediate and accessible. Faith invites peace into the chaos and strengthens your resolve to respond with love instead of fear. Practicing mindfulness is another powerful tool. A mindfulness trains you to stay present, observing your thoughts and emotions without getting swept away. By focusing on your breath or your surroundings, you create distance between the trigger and your reaction. This moment of pause is where transformation happens. Instead of reacting with hurt or anger, you respond with calm and clarity. Healing also requires setting boundaries, both with yourself and others. Protect your emotional well-being by recognizing what environments or relationships amplify your triggers and learning when to step back. Boundaries are not walls to isolate but shields that guard your peace, allowing you to engage from a place of strength rather than vulnerability. Personal growth is intertwined with this process. Each time you face a trigger and choose a peaceful response, you build emotional resilience. You grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate toward yourself and others. This growth rewires your mind, reducing the power of triggers over time. Real-life stories illustrate this journey. Consider a woman who used to explode with anger at minor annoyances. Through prayer, self-reflection, and therapy, she discovered that her outburst masked deep fears of abandonment. As she faced these fears and leaned on her faith, her reaction softened, and her relationships flourished. Or a man who struggled with jealousy, recognizing it stemmed from his insecurities. By surrendering his fears and seeking divine healing, he learned to trust and respond with grace. Overcoming emotional triggers is a process, a commitment to healing, faith, and self-awareness. It won't happen overnight, but with persistence, you will reclaim your peace. You will no longer suffer because you react too much. Instead, you will respond from a place of strength and love. This is your call to action. Begin today to notice your triggers, breathe through them, and speak the word of faith over your heart. Choose healing over hurt, peace over panic, and resilience over reaction. Your mind and soul are meant to be free, not controlled by past wounds but empowered by present grace. Let go of reactive suffering and step in the peace that awaits when you overcome your emotional triggers.